and it's lent out not just once, but 10 times. See, we have the fractional reserve banking system means that any bank has to only hold, by law, 10% of the actual, shall we say, the amount of money they actually have in their on deposit. They don't actually have to have 10% of it. Now, how this all transpired was the banking system actually began with the goldsmiths back in, I guess, 15th, 16th century. And the goldsmiths, essentially what they did was that they kept their clients' gold for safekeeping, because it's cumbersome to haul around, and their customers wanted a safe place to keep it. And what they noticed over the course of time was only 10% of that gold was actually removed at any one, in any one month or whatnot, or any one year. Only 10%. The rest of it just sat there. And so they devised this idea that they would lend their gold out that was not being required by their clients to make money off of it. And that's how the fractional reserve came about. So right now we have here in the United States, I don't know how it is back in Europe or elsewhere. If for example, you put $100 into your bank account, you just deposit it, that $100 can be lent out multiple times, the same $100. So and since it's 10%, I mean, you can do the math yourself. I haven't bothered to do it. I just want to get the principle across. You put $100, they keep $10 back, they lend out 90. Okay? Then they lend out 10% of the 90, and so forth and so on until whatever. So many multiples of the original 100 are lent out. Now the interesting thing is, the banks pay you as a depositor an interest rate that is totally pitiful. So they're essentially borrowing the money from you as a depositor at a rate of what, 0.001% or whatever it is, some hilariously ridiculous infinitesimal interest rate. And then they're lending it out at 5, 6, 7, 8%. I mean, this is easy money. It's no wonder banks ever go under. I mean, if they were really based on sound, I mean, the people running them were, ethical and upright and pillars of the community, so to speak. I mean, they were real dignified, upright, morally responsible, adult, mature human beings. No bank would ever go under. But that's not the way it is. No, because banks, you see, what they started to do, they didn't do what the traditional bank was set up to do, which is, they're there to loan money. That's their business. Their business is to take deposits and then loan the money out, which is fair. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as it's lent out on a one-to-one basis. And then if you want to borrow money from them, you need a loan to start a business or to, you have some idea, some innovative idea, and you want to make a business out of it, or, you need to repair your barn, or you want to buy some seed crop for next year's harvest, some seed. Then you go to the bank, and you meet with the loan officer, and the loan officer knows you personally. They know your wife, they know your family history. This is a human relationship. And this is a relationship that over time, if you back up what you're doing, that is, you pay the money back, and it's a relationship based on trust, personal trust, because each party knows each other. That's not the way it is now. Not at all. And of course, that's how the whole mortgage fiasco developed. They started using their money and, originating mortgages and making the money, and then using the mortgages to sell them to other investors. And that's how the whole thing, what they are, mortgage-backed securities. The whole mortgage fiasco that happened in 2005 to 2007, which was the start of the whole financial collapse. So, what we have then is a banking system which issues debt. Okay, because the money that you deposit there is a liability to them. And the asset that they create from that liability is to loan it out at a certain interest rate, which is fair. If it was run fairly, that is. And they would make money out of it to keep their operations going and pay their people, and that would be that. And it would be very, very kind of what people today call stodgy. But the fact of the matter is not stodgy at all. It's sound, it's healthy, it's wholesome, and it makes the whole system, the economy, function, because there's two kinds of debt: good debt and bad debt. The good debt is the one I've just described, where you are working day in, day out, 5 days a week, whatever, you're putting money aside, you're saving, I don't know, say 10-20% of whatever you earn, and you put that in the bank, in a savings account, and it's earning a paltry interest, but nevertheless it is earning some interest. And then the bank uses those savings in order to, that's known as capital. That's raising capital, that's what it is. And that's a very sound banking practice. But that's not the way things operate today. Because with the Federal Reserve System injecting money into the system, what's that? That's bad debt. Now what that means, essentially, for all practical purposes, is that the economy functions on the basis of people borrowing money. In other words, if people don't borrow money, corporations, governments, and individuals and states, municipalities, whatever, in other words, if they paid off all their debt, the economy would cease to function. Which is why they're always incentivizing everybody to borrow. As I mentioned earlier, the Federal Reserve Note is not money. It's not even, it can't even be considered money at all. It's actually a debt note. It is an IOU. It says Federal Reserve Note right on the dollar bill. And the word note technically, legally, means it's an IOU. Meaning that when you have that dollar bill in your hand, you owe the Federal Reserve $1. That's what it means. Now, you didn't think you were doing that when you got your paycheck and you deposit in the bank and you withdraw $100 and you have the $100 bills in your hand. You didn't think you were borrowing money from the Federal Reserve, did you? But that's exactly what we've done. And then it says there right on the note, on the dollar bill, this is legal tender for all debts, private and public. And as I mentioned in one of the episodes, there's no possible way that you can pay off debt with another debt. It's simply not mathematically possible. So that's why the debt has grown exponentially over the course of the last 40 years since the inception of the closing of the gold window by Nixon on August the 15th, 1971. And now to me, after I read that book I mentioned, The Creature from Jekyll Island, by Edward Griffin about the inception of the Federal Reserve and how it came into being. I read that book and I said to myself, you know, the seeds of the destruction of this whole system were planted the day that the Federal Reserve was inaugurated. And the people that inaugurated it, they must have known that. The fact that it's taken this long, you know, which is, well, of course, in terms of the human history and the annals of time, 100 years is just a blink of an eye. But it has taken quite some time. And I thought the system was collapsing in, when did I first get wind of this? 1987. That's when I thought it was going to start collapsing, you know. But so it's collapsing right now. It's imploding. And how it's going to be... Now, the point is that the ultra rich individual families, you know, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and who knows who, that control the banking system, and thereby they control the governments of the world, do not want this particular game, so to speak, to end, because it's the source of their power and their riches. And they're doing everything in their power to try to stave off the inevitable. But it's going to collapse no matter what they try to do. Because the only answer they seem to have is to pile more debt upon them already monstrous debt. I mean, I read a figure the other day that in the banking system worldwide, the total debt, all kinds of debt, you know, government, state, municipalities, corporations, and individuals, is $200 trillion. There's no possible way that's ever going to be paid back. And I think these people know it. That doesn't cut it. It's much better. This is a time of year for inward looking, for contemplation, reflection, and meditation and prayer. From now on until the time buds start to show. And there's a lot to meditate upon and contemplate and reflect upon. And it's time everybody really woke up to the situation in which we find ourselves, instead of trying to pretend that the government knows what it's doing, because the government does know what it's doing, and the government wants to eviscerate us. They want to create a serfdom, you know, and sort of like an unholy miscegenation of imperial Rome and medieval Europe. That's really what they're after. And in the control of a very few individuals. And as I said, it's time for people to emancipate themselves from all that. And you can do that. You don't have to worry about what they're doing if you know how to protect ourselves and how to approach this whole situation. So on that note, I'll say good night, good evening, good day, and good morning, wherever you happen to be. Thank you very much.